Hey, this is Lenny Sherman. I just saw the Angry Video Game Nerd movie. It's a movie that I've been waiting probably about a good 6 years to see, and it just finally came out today on Vimeo On Demand. For those who don't know, the Angry Video Game Nerd was an online character that was started back in 2004 actually by an aspiring filmmaker named James Rolfe, who with this movie finally broke into what he's been wanting to do, and it's certainly an inspiration for what I've been wanting to do. He made a feature film. It's funny because as popular as the nerd character is, every time I bring him up to people, it's funny how many people don't really know how he is. And, you know, it's hard to remember that not everyone is going to be into video games. People are into all kinds of different things. This particular show, The Angry Video Game Nerd, caters to a sense of nostalgia, and that's exactly why I love the series. It's actually one of my favorite series of all time. Not just internet videos, but, this is one of the most entertaining series of all time. If you owned a Nintendo growing up in the 80s or the early 90s, if you owned a Sega Genesis, if you're one of those lucky or unlucky kids to own a Sega CD or a 32X, or even remember what those are, this show is for you. I'll give you a little introduction before I go into the movie. Just kind of a little history of my knowledge of the nerd and why I'm such a big fan. I found out about the Angry Video Game Nerd in 2007. 2007 was kind of a rough year for me. I had a lot of things going on, good and not so good in my personal life. For starters, I had lost a job. I was out of work for a couple of months, and I was just starting to go back to school, on top of some other personal issues that were going on that year. And my friend Matt Weatherford, who we started Schmuckcast together, our podcast on iTunes, if you guys have listened to that, he introduced me to a couple of these videos. And this was 2007. YouTube had been around for a couple of years, but it wasn't really what it is now. And the Angry Video Game Nerd helped to popularize YouTube, and his videos generate millions of views, so he was very successful. I believe the very first video of his I saw was for Friday the 13th, and essentially it's a 15-minute review. He actually reviews the old Nintendo game Friday the 13th, and he actually had Jason make a guest appearance in the show. It was really interesting. And I visited his site. He has a site, cinemassacre.com, and at that point he had like 40 to 50 videos done. So I became very addicted to them. First of all, because a lot of the earlier games that he did were Nintendo games that I grew up with. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was one. He did Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest was his very first episode. He did The Karate Kid and Roger Rabbit. Not just movie-based games, but he did Rambo. He did Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, and just tore them a new asshole. It was really, really therapeutic. And it's entertaining for several reasons. One, again, he caters to nostalgia. Anybody who owned a Nintendo played a lot of these games. And, you know, when you're a kid, you don't understand that, oh, this is a crappy game. But it's funny that he's like a 30-year-old reviewing these games that we all played in our childhoods as if they were games that just came out. And that was what was interesting. You had a lot of websites that reviewed games, just new games coming out, but to review older games that no one really gave a shit about anymore was different. And he did it in such an entertaining way. And then the other thing was the language. He swore a lot. It was like a nerd trademark. And he didn't just curse like a comedian would, like you'd see on HBO. He like strings together curse words in really colorful, interesting ways. And it attracted like 10-year-olds apparently who've watched the show, and then they'll go on and play Halo Online and use his terminology in the games. It's been noted that because of the show, he's the Angry Video Game Nerd, James Rolfe, the guy who created this character and who plays this character, has used the show as a platform to kind of call out how game companies do tend to take advantage of consumers, especially younger consumers, and they can put out all kinds of crap, especially when it comes to video games that are based off of an existing property just to make a quick buck. Like a lot of these movies, the blockbuster movies come out and they release these crappy tie-in video games that aren't really worth the CD they're printed on. So he's been known for calling out a lot of these game companies for doing that. You can go to his website, cinemassacre.com, and you can actually buy his episodes on DVDs. And I've done that. It's one of the few online series of videos that I've actually bought the DVDs for. My wife and I will sit there and just watch them all night because they are very entertaining. And back in 2007, he had only been out for a couple of years. He was doing like 2 videos a month. And these were ambitious videos, especially the ones where he had guest appearances. He reviewed Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle, where Bugs Bunny actually had a big part in the video. Of course, he has friends dress up and everything, but he goes all out. He had, Spider-Man review, Batman review. He always does it in character. And then he does traditional videos, too, where he just does the review as the nerd character. But they were just very entertaining. And then in 2008, James Rolfe announced that he was going to slow down on the Angry Video Game Nerd and focus on the series and focus more on the movie. He had just a video showing the audience, showing us the script that he had written with a couple of friends of his, and that he was going to start on this movie. And back in 2008 or 2010, I watched this video going, well, that's pretty cool. But you hear an announcement like that, and what a lot of first-time filmmakers do is because they can't get the financing, they can't secure the financing to make a watchable product. I really thought he was just going to do, a 90-minute version of a nerd movie, which was just a big game review. That was not what the movie was. The movie is pretty much what he said it was going to be. It's the best way to really describe it without spoiling it is it's kind of like Wayne's World. Wayne's World started out with these 2 characters doing this basement underground TV show, and it was an SNL skit. And then when the movie came out, it showed you the world that these characters lived in outside of the SNL sketch. That's very much what the movie is like. It starts off with the nerd character being the nerd, and then it pulls back, and it shows you this whole world he lives in with this big action adventure. The movie is very epic, by the way. And I just want to say, well done to James Rolfe. Because he's like the embodiment of what a lot of us aspiring filmmakers want to be. He took advantage of this opportunity and he ran with it, and he accomplished his dream. He made his first feature film, and I just have to say, I envy you. This is something that a lot of us want to do, that a lot of us aspire to do, and we don't all have the luxury of having, an established fan base that enabled you to go out and make this movie. So I want to say congratulations, because I just saw it. I actually bought it today on Vimeo, and I had to work and I had to go to school, and I didn't get home till late. But I'm here at 11:30 at night just finishing it up, and I gotta say I really enjoyed it. It's a very enjoyable movie. It is a movie that I feel would have benefited more if I had seen it in a theater with fans. So he finishes the movie this year. He makes the big announcement in, I think, May or June, that he's actually going to finish the movie by July, I think it was July 21st, and that he was going to premiere it at the Egyptian Theater in Los Angeles. The Egyptian Theater is it's an historical U.S. landmark for motion pictures. It's where Return of the Jedi premiered back in 1983, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was the theater that held the first movie premiere. It's very historical for those things. He actually he premiered the movie there. There were people who were fans of him who flew overseas just to see this movie. So that's how big of a fan base he has. And it's a movie that, like I said, I've been waiting for about 4 years. I haven't really anticipated any movie that long, aside from like the Star Wars movies when those were coming out. So that's saying something. It met expectations, and I noticed that a lot of people who reviewed the movie also ended up being in the movie. Like the Nostalgia Critic, who, had a big part in casting the movie, and he has actually a small cameo in the movie. He reviewed it, and nobody's really, I don't feel, has given their opinion on it. Everybody's kind of been congratulatory about it. The only flaw I found with the movie, I'll start with the negatives, because there aren't very many. I think it's a 2-hour film. And I think maybe it could have been a little shorter, because there were definitely scenes that seemed to go for a little longer. There were some scenes that were more dialogue heavy than others. And especially there's a lot of action in the movie. Some of the scenes seem a little unbalanced, and there were some things in this movie that were I didn't expect. That's the thing. I don't know if I like those scenes or not, But again, I could definitely see the creativity and the passion that went into this. And that's all I can really say about it. I don't want to spoil anything. I definitely found it to be entertaining. It's definitely something that I would like to watch a couple more times. Yeah, I mean, it's very energetic. The effects, it was really cool that the movie had a lot of practical effects. There were some digital effects, but for the most part, anything that could be practical was done practically. And I really appreciated that. Even though sometimes you could tell it was fake, I think that added to the film's charm. One of the really great things about this that I think is kind of newsworthy is he took advantage of Indiegogo, a crowdfunding campaign. For those who don't know, crowdfunding is like the new way of financing not just movies, but any kind of entrepreneurial kind of business thing, any kind of invention or any kind of thing you want to sell and you want to try to get money for. Indiegogo is an option. It seems to work best for those who have an established audience, as with James Rolfe. Generally, when people they do a Kickstarter campaign or an Indiegogo campaign and they have a budget in mind, they don't generally get the full amount of the budget that they were anticipating. They only get a fraction of the budget. And how it's a gift setup. What I mean by that is the more money you donate towards this cause or this business or whatever, the more gifts you have. Actually, Star Wars Episode 7 did something very similar to this. It wasn't a crowdfunding campaign, but it was to raise awareness for a cause that J.J. Abrams was starting. I think it's the Force for Cause, if I'm not mistaken. And essentially, the more you donate to this cause, the more you'll be rewarded. Like, if you gave like $20,000, you could have a private screening of the movie in your hometown when the movie's done, that kind of thing. So crowdfunding kind of works the same way, where if you donate like $20, you get like a t-shirt. If you donate $100, you can become an extra in the movie. And long story short, he financed, I think it was around $350,000 to make this movie, and he got all of it through crowdfunding from his fans. That's the key word here. The fans made this movie possible. And you can really tell $350,000 sounds like a lot of money on paper, but in the movie world, it's really not. And you could tell he really kind of stretched this budget. There are parts of the movie that do look kind of cheap. Parts of it were kind of like watching an extended nerd episode, the more ambitious ones, because he's had some really ambitious nerd episodes that went above and beyond just reviewing games. He had like storylines, unraveling in certain shows, and that's what this was. It was a very, like, the biggest budgeted Angry Video Game Nerd episode. That's what this really was. If you're a fan of the series, you're definitely gonna enjoy it. If you've never really heard of the nerd and you try to see this movie through word of mouth, you'd probably be a little lost. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna give too much about the story aside from the subject matter revolves around E.T., which is often considered the worst game of all time, very much like how Plan 9 from Outer Space is considered the worst movie of all time. Whether you believe they're true or not, it's up to opinion. But E.T. has an interesting backstory because the developer who created this game only had 5 weeks to turn it around, and it got rushed into store shelves right around the time of the video game crash. So legend has it that Atari, when they were liquidating all their inventory, they just dumped millions of these unsold Atari cartridges into these landfills. And that's what the story is about. There's some fictional twists along the way, and I'm not going to spoil anything. If you've done your research on the movie, you probably know what the twists involve anyway. But I was really excited to see the movie. And, for $10, for $5 you can rent it on Vimeo. For $10 you can buy it and download it to your computer, which is great. But, yeah, I thought it was a really well done movie. I really enjoyed it. And, that's basically my review of it. Check it out, the Angry Video Game Nerd movie, and also check out Cinemassacre.com, because you'll find some of the best episodes, best online entertainment that you'll ever see on there, especially for the young video gamer at heart. So this is Lenny Sherman, and I'm out. Thanks for listening.